Hey everyone, and welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a polygamous group run by their prophet Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for this weekend will be 11 years. So this is my last time saying for
You've
10
been saying
years.
10 years for a long time.
For like a whole year.
Like exactly a year.
We have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. Today we're back with episode 3 of the Aftermath called The Bridge, all about Scientology with Leah Remini.
Yes, today the episode was really about 2 main aspects to Scientology. One was talking about all of the books, like I want to say like the meat and potatoes of like if you were to go into a Scientology building and you were like, I want to do all the courses. What does that look like? What does it mean? And she goes through and explains that they call it the bridge. And she brings out like this huge chart, right? To show exactly what the steps are. It's this step, this step, this step. But it was crazy to see how many publications, she said, basically you have to read every single thing that L. Ron Hubbard has ever written. And then they keep republishing stuff to make people try to buy it again.
To convince them to keep buying more things. It was a lot about the money aspect and how much money these people are spending.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Leah, what did she say? A couple $1 million?
She said, she said that, millions of dollars for her. And she said most people put in at least $250,000.
Yeah, which is just crazy if you think about how much money that is. And this is required. It's not like, hey, you can come and worship with us, or I guess not really worship because they don't believe in religion the same way. even though they claim that they are a religion, it's more about you can come get this self-help from us, but you have to pay a lot of money, and you have to read all of these books if you're going to be a Scientologist.
Yeah, and they talked about the lower levels. Again, it's not just been them. Everyone that we've talked to, heard from, has talked about the fact that these first levels, if you walked in and you were like, I want to do these first levels, really do feel like self-help, and that they will help people in general, right? And that a lot of them are just good life lessons, things, and those are the type of things that people are paying these lower tiers for. They are getting the auditing, they're working through trauma, they're working through just normal life things. And it's really as they start working up this bridge that it can become super all-consuming.
Right.
And when they were talking about these lower levels, and she was saying, like, then you have to read all of the things. And I was trying to think of like a comparison. And I don't think that there is one in the amount of force that it sounds like that you have to read. I think most religious texts, now this is all from one guy, right? So it's totally out of the realm of mainstream Christianity of, hey, it's really important that you read your Bible every night. Or, hey, read the Bible, read the Book of Mormon, like how we were raised. You know, that's important. And if you aren't doing it, like, your life will be better if you do it, was kind of always the mentality. But it was never like if you don't do it, then there's going to be repercussions for you. At least not the way I was raised. What about you? What kind of repercussions would happen if you didn't?
Well, it was a mental game. It was a mental game. It wasn't so much, hey, if you don't read your scriptures every night, you know, we're going to find out about it. We're going to come in and we're going to paddle your little butt for not doing it, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't so much like what would happen, what we would do to you. It is if you don't read your scriptures every day, you are basically not accepting all of the blessings that are meant for you, that God is trying to give you. Like you are just rejecting God by not reading your scriptures every day.
Yeah.
At least the way it came across to me, and especially in the FLDS church, it was a very important thing that we were required to do, not in the sense that something physically bad would happen to us, but just in the sense of this is what God is asking of you. And so if you don't do it, we felt very guilty for it.
I feel like even more than like a mental coercion to do it, it was like if I didn't do it, my life wasn't going to be as good. So if something bad happened in life or life was feeling hard, then it was like, oh, I'm probably not reading my scriptures enough. Was the mentality behind it.
Or going to church, those types of things. Like doing these acts were what would bring the blessings.
Yes. I wonder, we're going to need to ask someone, which we have a couple interviews coming up. I know people in the comments have already seen, but we do have a couple more interviews that we're really excited about that are going to be coming up in the next 2 weeks. But we definitely need to ask some people about, like you said, whether or not it was actually physical coercion or if it was like a mental game of this is what you need to do or else you can't get to the next bridge level. Because that's definitely something, like you were saying, like getting to the next spiritual level, being ready to be able to do the next thing or have your heart and your mind open to the things that you need to learn. Those type of things are definitely taught, I'd say, in most Christianity. Like you need to have your heart and mind open and be reading if you want answers to your problems. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe I'm curious how far it went. When she says they had to read it, it's like, okay, how far does that go? Or was it always like optional, but emotionally you felt like you had to?
Yeah, and that's a great question. When they say you had to buy all these books, you had to read all of these books, was that just to be in good standing with the group? I don't know if I should even call them a religion.
Yeah.
With this group of people or this organization, was it just a, this is what you need to do in order to move to the next step, like you're saying?
Yeah.
Or is it, hey, if you don't read this, you're out of here, we're going to break up the family, we're going to separate you from your loved ones, and all of these other things that would come later with people.
How extreme is it? Because there were extra publications, like in the mainstream LDS church, we also had like magazines, the Ensign, the Friend, and people were encouraged that like after General Conference, all of the talks of the prophets and apostles and leaders would all be published in that magazine, and you were encouraged to reread it and make sure that you get through it, and that's where your lessons were coming from. Or when you'd have like visiting teachers, they would have a message from those publications. So there is, and there's other manuals, like there's definitely a lot of information for whether it's classes, whether it's personal, whether it's Word of the Prophet that gets released that you should reread. So there's definitely a lot of things to read, and I would say that people who would be considered the most faithful are reading all of the things. I personally don't feel like it ever felt like how Leah was describing it in this.
I personally don't feel like that most of the people active in Scientology or active in other religious groups are looking at it and thinking of it as being forced into it. I think there's, just like we were when we were raised, we would say, well, why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't you want to hear the words of the prophet?
Why wouldn't you want to listen to the words of the prophet? It's only going to better your life. It's going to ensure that you have all of these blessings in this life and the next. Why would you reject it? It's not about being forced into it. It's about accepting this great opportunity. Mm-hmm. And what's money? Money's just in this life. It's not even like, what? Here, sure, have my money. Whatever. That's not a big deal because they're promising me all of these great spiritual blessings, which is much more important, right?
Yeah. And honestly, when they were talking about the money and they kept talking about how much money it truly is, I'd say the main difference between Scientology's money versus tithing, which we know the LDS Church isn't the only one that believes in the law of tithing. In the LDS, it's 10% of your income, which can add up really fast, especially if you make a lot of money. The LDS Church has a lot of people that make a lot of money. So when she's talking about, a couple 100,000, I'm like, okay, well, there's definitely people who easily, that we know, that make a lot of money and are probably paying $100,000 a year in tithing, in 3 years. And they're spending their whole adult lives paying that. So money-wise, it sounds like a lot when you put it like that. But I don't think people necessarily add up the amount of tithing over an entire lifetime can be well beyond what they were talking about in Scientology. Whereas Scientology, it's like, you're paying this to get this course. You're paying this to get this course. And that's how you're moving it up, like moving up. Whereas tithing is supposed to be a spiritual principle, but also you can't move up what the LDS would call the covenant path. They're talking about this bridge to total freedom where you do these things and you achieve these levels and then you can like unlock the next level basically, right? And just bringing it back to like kind of how we were raised, I was like, well, we have what's called the covenant path where you have these different things and then you get baptized. And then once you're baptized, these different things that you do and follow in order to be worthy of a temple recommend. And then you're going there and you're receiving more knowledge and making new covenants, right? And to be able to get in the temple, you do have to be paying, you have to be a full tithe payer. You have to be paying 10% of your income in order to maintain your temple recommend. So it's different for sure, but the aspect and the idea of paying a certain amount of money, continuing to be able to like go down a certain path that's going to lead you. I mean, Scientology, it's all different words.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they're still not so different that you can't draw parallels and similarities between the two of them.
Right. And I'm sure there are some people that are in one of these groups that say, oh my gosh, you guys are crazy. It's nothing, not even close, not even close. And then someone from the other group is thinking the same thing, not even close. Like we're the ones doing it the correct way. These guys, no. But and we're not trying to just bash on people's beliefs at all. All we're trying to do is prove that in a lot of these high demand groups, whether it's religion or whatever they're called, there's a lot of similarities in the way that people ultimately get to be these empires with all of this money and all of this control over people's lives, which can be so dangerous. And that is all we're trying to do, is warn people of the dangers and some people might go through these experiences in these groups and never feel any type of problem. Yeah. And maybe it's helping them and benefiting their lives and everything is going well. And congratulations, that's amazing. But there are those people that get to these positions, which we see in so many different documentaries and in so many interviews that we do with people, where they wish that they would have seen these red flags coming along the way. But when they finally noticed that it was not okay, it was too late, and they had already gone through all of these different experiences and suffering, and that's what we're trying to prevent. Not to just say, oh my gosh, every group out there is trying to harm you and hurt you in some way.
No, and I like that you mentioned that not everyone is going to be harmed from any of these groups. I don't necessarily believe that every person in Scientology is going to have harm, or definitely not every person within Mormonism. I think there's lots of people who, like you said, are living happy lives and everything is going to be great for them. One thing that in this episode, they brought up Mary, and she talked about the fact, though, that when you bring children into it and you teach them that, and that's all they know, then later, if your faith shifts and they're in a high demand religion or group, that can be really hard and can break up families. So she was talking about the fact that she, her one son now is disconnected from them because as she continued through Scientology and realized that there was so much pressure to spend money and she wasn't believing that it was helping her and she wanted to get out of this group, then she ended up losing her family, like losing her son. Her son is no longer allowed to talk to her. And we've seen firsthand the damage that can be done when a family, even my own family, which thank goodness relationships are healing and doing better now. But when my dad left the church, there was huge relationship shifts and problems between the siblings who all still believed in the church and our dad. There was an automatic rift all of a sudden, like overnight, boom. Okay, well...
It's almost like you can no longer trust what that other person says.
Yeah, like, wait, how could you change your mind? You taught us that this was true, and we believe it wholeheartedly, and now you're telling us that you don't. And yeah, we've seen firsthand, and even if you don't want it to cause problems in relationships, it definitely can, and it's heartbreaking. And the same with Mary, where she's hoping, luckily my family all still talks to each other and has good relationships, but it's taken work and time too to like reintroduce how each other thinks and where people are and whether or not they can find ways to be able to relate in new different ways that religion held before. So it's pretty tricky when you have kids, and it's even more in the FLDS.
Oh my gosh. Any religion that purposely, group, religion, whatever, that purposely splits up a family is an awful organization, period. And I've experienced that, of course. Scientology obviously is going down that path with many people. If they choose to leave, they're forced to be separated from their families. And of course, they may say, oh, no, we're not separating them. It's just that their children that are in the group no longer want to associate with those people that are leaving because now they're making all of these awful choices, blah, blah, blah. Not true. The organization has so much control and power over these people's minds that they, for example, in my case, my parents don't feel that they are allowed to have a relationship with me because I made these bad choices of leaving the FLDS church. The FLDS church has instilled in their minds that I am a bad person now because of the choices I've made, and that they shouldn't associate with me because I will be a bad example on them and the family and only bring pain in their lives, basically. And so when an organization has that much control and is intentionally splitting up a family, that's where I have to draw the line, and I say there's just not a lot of good can come out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was hard to see Mary and her son and talking about her, just her transition, her faith transition out of it. And luckily, her and her husband remained married because that was something that, the Church of Scientology wanted them to be divorced and trying to separate everyone. So luckily, she's still with her husband. Hopefully, at some point, her son will try to reconnect with them. I hope that for them. But the amount of money that she put in and she was talking about, and the amount of lengths she went through in order to do what she thought was going to keep her family together, and the pressure that she felt that if she didn't do everything exactly like they wanted, her family was going to be torn apart, was heartbreaking and reminded me of so many mothers in the FLDS where they're worried about being separated from their children, and then if they are just hoping and waiting to be reconnected. And sometimes when they are, the kids end up, like for minor children, the minor children are wanting to go back to the FLDS because then they think that their mothers are evil for having left the church. So it's an ongoing thing that's not just black and white either.
Yeah. And it's not like these people that leave these groups have to do anything bad. Like, it's not like when I left the FLDS church, I burned down a building. I started taking all of these drugs. I did all of these illegal things, anything. All I did is walked away and immediately was marked as a bad person. That's it. So that's my point, is that it's just so sad. It's just so sad when parents are feeling, or children are feeling forced and stuck in situations because they are afraid that their family will be split up the moment they make the slight change in their belief or their walk of life, I guess.
Yeah. So lots of interesting information in this. We're going to keep going through this. Like I said, we have some interviews that are coming up the next couple weeks, but after that, we'll definitely get through at least season 1. We're learning more and more every single episode we watch. And man, this Scientology has been a crazy ride so far.
It is a hot topic. We thought Sister Wives was a hot topic. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about Scientology, which is great. We've been very interested in all of the comments coming in. So much information we just were not familiar with.
Yep. So we've learned a lot. We have a lot more to learn, and we will take you on that journey with us.
Thank you all so much for being here with us again, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.